Fox News alert. Israel conducting an airstrike in Gaza overnight, saying that Hamas terrorists attacked Israeli troops on the ground there.
Israel is calling it a bold violation of the new ceasefire, putting the whole region on edge.
Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Good morning, Trey. This is not good news.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. It's not good news. The Israeli military is currently striking the Gaza Strip. They say Hamas violated the ceasefire agreement. I spoke with one military official who said 2 separate attacks took place inside Israeli-controlled territory. One of them an RPG attack and the other a sniper attack conducted by Hamas. Most of the strikes this morning have taken place in the southern Gazan city of Rafah, but there is at least one report of a strike in the northern part of the enclave. This was a difficult moment for Israeli forces, having to make a decision about whether or not to start striking Gaza again. We also understand at this moment that there are warnings from the U.S. State Department against Hamas. Overnight, a statement was released by the U.S. State Department saying, quote, "The United States has informed the guarantor nations of the Gaza peace agreement of credible reports indicating an imminent ceasefire violation by Hamas against the people of Gaza." And so we're looking at 2 separate things here. One, an attack by Hamas overnight on Israeli forces within the Gaza Strip. And 2, a warning from the U.S. State Department that Hamas is planning to target Palestinian civilians or the forces that are currently opposing their rule inside Gaza. All of this comes as Hamas released the bodies of 2 additional hostages overnight. We do know the name of one of those hostages from a kibbutz in the southern part of Israel. His name is Ronen Engel, and Israeli authorities released his name overnight after informing his family. This means that there are still 16 bodies belonging to hostages inside Gaza. Those bodies are supposed to be released by Hamas as part of this agreement, and they've been trickling out so far since the agreement went into place. But again, the latest information that we have right now, Israeli forces are indeed striking the Gaza Strip. The military confirms to Fox News after they say Hamas violated the ceasefire agreement. Guys?
Trey, really quick. So when Hamas violated that agreement and those rockets were shot over to Israel, were there civilians there? And then on the Israeli side, in their retaliation, are there civilians involved in that as well?
So we understand that Hamas violated the agreement by firing across the yellow line. This is the line that divides the Gaza Strip, where Israeli forces are currently in control and where Hamas is still in control. And according to this military official that I talked to, there were 2 separate attacks. One was an RPG attack, and the other was a sniper attack targeting Israeli forces within Gaza. The Israelis still control about 53% of the Gaza Strip as part of phase 1 of this agreement. If the ceasefire moves forward, they will pull back. But this yellow line will continue to be something that we talk about. Over the weekend, a Palestinian family was killed after an Israeli tank fired on their vehicle. Now, the Israelis say that vehicle crossed the yellow line in violation of the ceasefire, and after warning shots were fired, they targeted the vehicle. And so this yellow line will continue to be a sticking point in the negotiations about where exactly the line is located. Of course, the Gaza Strip is around 30 miles long, and so it's very difficult to know the exact points along the enclave where Israeli forces are in control and where Hamas is in control. But the fact that Hamas has launched this blatant attack against Israeli forces is an indication that they are not adhering to the ceasefire agreement. To fire a rocket-propelled grenade and to conduct a sniper attack is a clear indication that Hamas still wants to fight inside Gaza. And Israeli forces have been very clear they will strike the Gaza Strip if Hamas violates the agreement. And already today, we understand, according to sources in Jerusalem, that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to hold security consultations as a result of this Hamas ceasefire violation. And there could be further actions by the Israelis. And of course, we do expect more communication to the intermediaries to try and get this back on track from a diplomatic angle. We know that Vice President J.D. Vance and also U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff are scheduled to visit Israel this week, and they're going to be discussing how to keep this ceasefire in place and ensure that it doesn't collapse.
So, Trey, let's step back for a second. Do we have any indication that something led up to this? Did we see this coming? And also, has Hamas officially said anything about why they're doing this?
They have not. They have talked on propaganda channels on Telegram and other messaging sites that they use to release propaganda, confirming that they are launching attacks against forces inside Gaza that oppose their rule. And we saw last week those horrific execution videos of Hamas killing civilians they claimed that stole aid or were working with the Israelis. As for the attacks on Israeli forces, this isn't surprising. In the past, when there have been ceasefire in place and agreements that were reached, not only during this war, but previous wars that we have covered, Hamas has violated the agreement because they want to continue the fight against Israel. And oftentimes they'll do it in these very small ways, single attacks here and there. But what the Israeli military wants to do is set a precedent, a red line. And so if any of these attacks happen, according to officials that we've spoken with, they will immediately respond because they want a level of deterrence. The issue here is if this spirals out of control and the ceasefire collapses, because Hamas understands they no longer have the leverage of living hostages, but they still do have the bodies of 16 others. Hamas has not ever acted in good faith when it comes to these negotiations, and they have often violated ceasefire agreements. And so this isn't a surprising moment. It's a moment that the Israeli military prepared for. There are contingency plans in place. There is still drone monitoring over the Gaza Strip and the ability for the Israeli Air Force to strike Gaza. But it is certainly concerning from a diplomatic level because the Trump administration wants this ceasefire to move forward. They want the war to be over. And it is very challenging with Hamas still in control of just under half of the Gaza Strip because they are now controlling the streets of Gaza in the areas that they are still operating in. There are gunmen in the streets. They are executing their opponents. And as we saw early this morning, they are now launching new attacks on Israeli forces.
So, Trey, you've been covering this from the beginning, and you've been covering these conflicts for many years now. What is your sort of gut feeling? Does this feel like something that is about to completely unravel, or is there still some hope that this might be a skirmish and that they might get back to the original ceasefire?
So I can tell you what's happening behind the scenes right now. Not only Israeli officials, but likely American officials, Egyptian officials, and Qatari officials are speaking every hour to try to get this back on track. The challenging part here, having covered this region all the way back to the war in 2014, is that Hamas is an organization that's very challenging to control. They don't operate in the way that a normal state would operate, or even a paramilitary group. This is a terrorist organization. And so even if their officials in Qatar or in Turkey or even inside the Gaza Strip say they're willing to adhere to the ceasefire agreement, it's a splintered organization that is fighting with guerrilla tactics. And so they can easily launch attacks in different locations to try to pressure Israeli forces that are inside Gaza. And the fear here is that this unravels into a broader ceasefire violation by Hamas, and then the war resumes, and that there's pressure on the Israelis to basically continue the war. Remember, Hamas agreed to disarm. They agreed to lay down their weapons. And I asked President Trump about this in our interview last week, and he said he still expects Hamas to adhere to the agreement. The challenging part here is if they don't lay down their weapons and they continue to fire on Israeli forces inside Gaza, the war is going to resume. And so that's the negotiating part. That's what comes next. There will be consultations that take place not only today, but into next week with Egyptian and Qatari officials to try to send a message to Hamas that's very simple. The war will resume if you don't lay down your weapons and stop these attacks on Israeli forces. They still do have a small arsenal of weapons inside Gaza, and as they've shown today, they're willing to use them.
Yeah, really a fragile situation with a lot of breaking news at this hour. Trey Yingst, thanks for getting up for us. Please keep us posted. We will bring you back as news warrants. Trey Yingst live in Tel Aviv.
Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, Trey.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.